All right. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another stream. And as you can see, we got a new camera. We got a new camera. Hopefully, everything's way more high definition thing. You can actually see the beer and everything, which is nice. So yeah, we got a new camera and everything. You actually see more of the background. So I'm hyped. I'm hyped of the camera, the quality and everything. Yeah, you actually can see the facial hair and the beard and everything, which is awesome. But yeah, welcome back to another stream. Um, so yeah, pretty much I just wanted an excuse to do a weekend stream. We got a new camera and everything, so I just wanted an excuse to show it off or anything. So yeah, I've no idea how else to start the stream other than that. That I have no idea how else to start other than say, hey, we got an upgrade, we got a new camera, and I'm just impressed with the quality. This is not a sponsorship, this is not a sponsorship ad because I do not get paid for these streams. But first time, first stream, booting this up and everything, I'm, as you can see, speechless just by the quality. I like it. What can I say? So besides upgrading the camera and everything and showing off the quality and everything, got another reaction on tap for today. Of course, it's gonna be FNAF because, well, I'm very creative when it comes to reactions. Like, let's do another FNAF one. So we're going to dive into that without further ado, and then we will see how it goes. But full disclaimer, as always, these are theories at the end of the day. I have my theories. I have my ideas of what I consider is canon or cancel lore or my timeline sequence of events, just like everyone else has their own. So don't doubt for people for their theories. All right. Disclaimer out the way. So on tap was FNAF, as you can see by the title, was FNAF's final mystery really that simple? And from what I know, this is give an answer to the FNAF 4 Crown Child, this kid right here. Because for all the kids, all the names we have in the series where it's like, William Afton is the purple guy in the golden bodysuit, then his business partner is Henry, who has a daughter named Charlotte/Charlie. We know the four kids who get in the Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, Chica animatronics. They're Freddy's Gabriel, Fotsy's Jeremy, Fotsy's Fritz, and Chica's Susie. Cassie's Golden Freddy and everything. Elizabeth Afton goes on Possessed Baby. So all the names that we know that exist. And of course, there's also a theory out there that Mrs. Afton's named Clara from the Immoral Restless Between Nights and Sister location. You have Vanessa, who may be Vanessa Afton, but that's never been confirmed. It's always just been Vanessa A. So of all the names of characters that we know exist and everything, this one from FNAF 4 came back in 2015, where it was a waste of our time. We do not know. We do not know the answer to that. We have no idea who his kid is. We always have just referred to him as the Crown Child, which is annoying. I've said this on past streams as well, that it's so annoying this kid does not have a name because, you can only say the Crown Child reference in FNAF 4 and everything when it comes to theories. You can only say Crown Child so many times where it's annoying where it's like, okay, can we at least have a name for him? Like, something, anything, rather than saying Crown Child in every single sentence, because FNAF 4 is confusing. All right, so if you have an answer to this question, I am already intrigued because I want to know an answer. All right, without further ado, 3, 2, 1, and once again, saying it for the disclaimer, these are theories at the end of the day. They're not confirmed. They're just ideas at the end of the day. They're theories. Do not tap people for their theories. Because in my opinion, theories is what keeps FNAF alive. Because Lord knows we don't get that many games often anymore. Gone the days where we get a new FNAF game every month.
After 9 years and countless theories, the crying child's name has been found. That's right, on screen right now is the real name of FNAF 4's crying.
Okay. Maybe I'm just biased, but of all these names that are shown, my eyes immediately went to Cole down here. Am I biased because that's my actual name? Probably. Alright. So, interesting. So we got, hopefully my camera's not blocking it. Unfortunately, my camera's blocking some of the very top. But Sebastian, Mats, Austin, Ian, Isaiah, Cameron, Luke. Alright. Is there any that stand out from the books or whatever? There's Gregory. Interesting. Very interesting. Because the running theory out there ever since Security Breach came out was Gregory was the robot version of Gregory, and Gregory is the robot version of the FNAF 4 Crying Child, because they both have a black shirt with gray stripes. Something about both being broken or bitten, having that connection, being connected to the Aftons. People have a theory that Glamrock Freddy has the soul of Michael Afton, so that's why Glamrock Freddy is so nice to Gregory and Security Breach, because it's a brother reconciled for his sins, where he shoved his younger brother in the mouth of Fredbear in FNAF 4. So, full deep dive, interesting. Let's see, any other names from books? But then again, there's a lot of books out there. Gabriel, which we've talked about, is Freddy's. The kid who goes on possessed Freddy is named Gabriel. Henry, interesting. Any other names? Dave, okay. Miles, interesting. Mason, blah, blah, blah. It probably doesn't matter. William, Cassidy. I'm trying to go as fast as possible with the book. To continue the video. Dave again. And Gabriel again. Look at that. Dave is down here at the bottom. Sorry, my mouse isn't showing it probably. But Dave is down here. Dave is also up in the middle. Gabriel's down here. Gabriel's also up there. Interesting. So is that a typo? And Gregory's also repeated. Okay. I don't know if this is a typo. And Henry's also down here. So, Dave, Gabriel, Gregory, and Henry. 4 names. They are repeated. That probably doesn't mean anything, but I am already suspicious targeting those 4. Especially Gregory, because of the popular theories out there ever since Security Breach came out.
Child. And by the end of this episode, you're gonna know exactly which one it is. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's just desperately trying to keep up with the FNAF content train. It feels like there's been a lot, right? We had all that stuff from the 10th anniversary, we've had our first full entry into the Choose Your Own Adventure style book series, there's even a FNAF level in the new Funko Fusion game. I swear, if there is lore in this thing, I am going to scream. But what?
A little segue a little bit. I will say the FNAF 10-year anniversary wasn't disappointing to not have FNAF be connected to Fortnite. Yeah, a little bit disappointing. To have it come out that the big tease reveal, I think it was the final day if I'm not mistaken, is either the second to last day or final. It was the second to last day or the final day of the 10-year anniversary for that week of FNAF related stuff. The Twitter account Scott Cawthon Games, which is the direct connection to, anything Five Nights at Freddy's, Nose Rise. They said it was like some mystery collab on this date. And the date was very interesting because it also coincided, coincidentally turns out, it coincidentally connected to a date when Fortnite was having a huge like patch update. So people linked the connection, big Fortnite update on this day. FNAF mystery collab on the same day. Right? And also the Fortnite data leakers and hackers out there who, leak information of, oh, this collab, this skin is coming out, this thing is in the works and everything. They also found in, Fortnite's like source code and everything, stuff related to Five Nights at Freddy's as well. Well, unfortunately, it was all a wash. None of it actually came to fruition. None of it actually happened, which feels disappointing and kind of sucks. Turns out the mystery collab was a Dead by Daylight DLC pack that's coming out in this summer. So that was the mystery collab. It makes a little bit more sense because FNAF is tied to horror and everything with Dead by Daylight, but having, source code stuff out there, Five Nights at Freddy's being in Fortnite, plus how popular Fortnite is and how memed on Five Nights at Freddy's is, like, I can just see a world. I've talked about it on stream before. I still hold out hope that Five Nights at Freddy's does get a collab with Fortnite. In my opinion, since it didn't come out during the 10-year anniversary when people thought about it because of the update, like I previously mentioned, I personally think the next opportunity that I'm pinpointing for a Fortnite FNAF collab, this is not me. I'm not a data miker, so don't sue me if I'm wrong. But just off my own interpretation, my own thinking, my next gut feeling is in early December because the FNAF 2 movie comes out December 5th of this year. So, December, I can totally see a world where Fortnite releases like Five Nights at Freddy's skins tease into the second movie because they do that a lot, right? Like, that's a common thing that they do. Like, oh, this movie's coming out, this hyped up movie's coming out. Let's throw in a, Fortnite pack because they've done it for every single Marvel release out there. They did for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, Spider-Man No Way Home, Thor Love and Thunder. I think they even did it for Ant-Man Quantumania. They released the Ant-Man skin again. Then they did Deadpool Wolverine. So yeah. So it's not impossible to think that Fortnite does a pop culture collab around a movie release date. Unfortunately, they didn't do it with the first one, which in my opinion was more hyped than the second movie because at least the first one has been talked about for several years. We were talking about the movie for a decade before the movie actually came out, right? But the only wait's only like 2 years. So take that as you will. So I still hold out hope, right? Don't sue me, but I still hold out hope that Five Nights at Freddy's does land in a Fortnite item shop soon. I'm pinpointing December, and if it does happen, that stream's gonna be fun. Memed on, of course, but still fun. Like, it just makes sense. You have, because all the Fortnite collabs are always like 4 characters and 1 female. Like, it's literally perfect. Anyway.
While I was busy just trying to keep on top of all of that, someone else decided that it would be fun to add one final slice to my already oversized mountain of lore pizza. Fellow theorist and friend of the channel, Hyperdroid. Now, normally another theorist posting a theory of their own doesn't particularly slow me down. I'd normally finish writing what I'm doing and then I'd go back and watch that later. But this one was different because he claimed he'd done the impossible. He claimed that after years of speculation, he'd finally found the name of the crying child. That is a massive claim, especially when so many others had tried and failed in the past. But it wasn't all talk. He backed it up with some pretty solid evidence that the fan base seemed to love. We were inundated with messages on our subreddit, Twitter, YouTube comments, all asking us one thing: is he right? And I get it. Hyperdroid is a fantastic theorist, but this particular puzzle has eluded us for so long, to the point where most of us just thought it would never be solved. If he is right and we're all gonna start calling the crying child something other than the crying child, we wanna make sure it stands up to scrutiny.
I will say, obviously this isn't the Hyperdroid video, and I haven't seen the Hyperdroid theory myself, so maybe in hindsight 2020 I should be reacting to that instead, the original theory that spawned this theory that we're now reacting to. But I will say, maybe this is just because I'm kept up in the FNAF fan base, especially the lore side of things. Pretty much every single named FNAF theorist out there that's come to the fan base in any way reacted to the theory, and they seem to have the stamp of approval like, yes, I think this is totally plausible. I agree with this theory. So, to my knowledge, one of the biggest theory videos that have been released where a lot of people collectively said, yeah, I agree with this. So that's just a little bit more background information on how big of a video that this was.
Don't want to be caught backing the wrong animatronic horse. So let's go through the evidence he's presented, the methods he's used, and see whether this new name holds water. Ladies and gentlemen, it's, can't use Morty anymore, can we? And doesn't look like Matt's gonna be interrupting me this time. Gotta come up with something new. Oh, I know!
Leave your theories in the comments below. I'll pick my favorite in the next episode of Trash.
Yeah, that's about right. I guess that's what happens when I let Yossi pick the acronym. Let's give a trash
Wait, hold on. What was it? What's trash? Hold up.
Yossi pick the acronym. Gotta come up with something. Gotta come up with something new.
God damn it! Come get the other song again. Alright, hold up. It's Blink and you miss it. Hold up. Okay. Tom reviews a submitted hypothesis. Okay.
Yeah,
we don't want to hear this song again.
What happens when I let Yossi pick the acronym? Let's give a trash take then, shall we? To understand how Hyperdroid came to find this new name, we first need to recap where the mystery started. The survival logbook. After the release of FNAF 6, we got this book that seemed to just be a kid's puzzle book, but it turned out to be one of the biggest lore clues in the entire series. And I really do mean that. Inside, we have 3 characters talking to us. Mike Afton writing in red pen, a ghostly spirit writing in faded text, and a final spirit altering the physical text of the book. Across several pages, the faded text wrote the words, "my name," and on one page, my name was written on a gravestone. This reflected the 5th gravestone with no name that we found at the end of FNAF 6. Thanks to Reddit user DPowerful1, we realized that you could take the altered numbers on the pages where the words "my name" were found and use those as coordinates for the word search, giving us the name Cassidy, the 5th missing child. This in and of itself was a huge dub for the FNAF community, but it was kind of bittersweet because there was another puzzle in this book that remained unsolved, the Foxy Grid. This grid had faded letters in the first few boxes, showing us that we needed to fill in the rest, and likely meaning we needed more coordinates to figure out a new name. The name of the spirit writing in altered text in the book. Based on Cassidy's questions about the purple plastic telephone, psychic friend Fredbear, as well as a birthday party that was for you, all things seem to be pointing to this final spirit being FNAF 4's crying child. The Foxy Grid was going to finally help us figure out the name of this character. The problem was, nobody could solve it. Matt was literally ripping his hair out for years over this thing. Some people tried to find the name in other places and then reverse engineer a solution. In Help Wanted, the FNAF 4 bedroom was called Norman Bedroom, so maybe Norman? Some people thought Garrett because that's Mike's brother in the recent movie. Some even thought it might be Gregory because he's designed in a similar way to the crying child.
Yep.
but none of them were able to link it back to the Foxy grid, and so it just felt inconclusive. A few Reddit users found the phrase "is Springtrap" using 6 Cassidy coordinates and 6 My Name page numbers. This seemed to pair nicely with My Name because it matched the FNAF 3 teaser. My name is Springtrap, and implied therefore that the ghostly text was actually Afton speaking to the crying child, whose name would therefore be Cassidy. But sadly, this solution ignores the 7th coordinate needed to make up the name Cassidy in the first place. And so by cherry-picking 6 of the coordinates, it kinda causes the whole thing to fall apart. Finally, the most simple and well-known of the theories was offered by Reddit user Wolfie1740 Kingdom. They matched the questions that Cassidy was asking to the answers given by the crying child in altered text. The party was for you. It was for me. What do you see? I can't see. Does he still talk to you? I can hear sounds. This gave them the letters E, V, and A. But they weren't really able to figure out the final letter. Another
Eva, it's Wally. That's it. That's the crying child's name that has been under our noses the entire time. His name's been Wally. Because at this point, why not?
Reddit user Godzilla813105 did manage to find a solution. They added up the tally marks to give them the final coordinates 39, leading to the letter N and the name Evan. A lot of people really liked this name and thought it was an interesting theory, but because you had to break the method on that final letter, it was just too tough a moon drop to swallow.
Yeah, it's what is it called? It's not cognitive dissonance. It's Southern bias. It's God, it's literally on the tip of my tongue. It's God, why can I not think of it? It's the thing of you have like 80-90% of a solution, or you have the solution in mind, but then you reverse and engineer how you got to the problem, right? It's like, on a, math test, for instance, where you have the answer to the problem and then you're asked, like, show your work on the test and everything. So now you put a bunch of, like, numbers and equations and a bunch of, like, letters in the equations and everything just to make it seem like, okay, this is the work I used to get the answer. Even though I knew the answer, I just had to show my work, right? It's working backwards. And, this could run into issues as well where it's like, you believe this system works and it doesn't really fit cleanly. But you want to make it work, right? You think you have the solution, you think you have a way to make it work and everything, and you just find any way to reverse engineer, yes, this can work, right? Because EVA was found using one system, right? But it's a boy, so it's not Eva, obviously. And then you basically go letter by letter, be like, oh, EVAA, EVAB, EVAC. And you basically go letter by letter until you get to the name Evan. You get to the letter N, and you're like, okay, that's a name. That has to be what it is. And then find a way to reverse engineer a way to get to the letter N. Because your mind is already convinced that N is the solution. Now I gotta find a way to get to that solution. Right? But it doesn't fit cleanly because why would 3 letters be used to, why would one method be used to find a few of the letters, but then the final letter is used something completely different, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? Normally, you would assume a solution is catered to one puzzle, right?
enter Hyperdroid. He too liked the initial method posed by Wolfie, but he agreed that the final letter would need to follow the same method, especially as Crying Child does offer a fourth answer, I'm scared. So he took the same 3 answers to get the letters E, V, and A, but rather than skipping the 4th answer, he tried to match it to another one of the questions. On page 41, Cassidy asks, do you have dreams? Initially, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense given the response, but underneath that question, Mike has drawn a picture of Nightmare. The Nightmare animatronics came...
What's a nightmare? Hold up.
Page 41, Cassidy asks, do you have dreams? Initially,
Is that Nightmare the Black Bear, or is that Nightmare Fredbear? It's blurry, so it's hard to see. To be honest, it can go either way. Because Nightmare and Nightmare Fredbear are pretty one-to-one. It's literally a reverse image where you have Nightmare Fredbear, which is Golden Freddy, the yellow bear, with purple accessories, but then Nightmare the Black Bear is a black bear with yellow accessories. So it's pretty close to an inverse of the two. But maybe that's Nightmare, but that's also Fredbear, which we know Fredbear is more connected to the FNAF 4 Crown Child because that was the animatronic the kid was shoved in the mouth in, and that's caused him to get bitten and then inevitably killed. Not Nightmare. Fredbear was the one who's more connected. Right? Obviously, I feel like I'm just... you could say that's like being very picky, but this is think about what franchise we're talking about here. You have to be consistent. You have to be picky, but we move.
Actually, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense given the response, but underneath that question, Mike has drawn a picture of Nightmare. The Nightmare animatronics came from William's experiments on his kids, and it's been theorized that this is what was used to make the Crying Child scared of the animatronics in FNAF 4. That means the Crying Child would not only know what this is, but would also be afraid of it, leading to him giving the seemingly non-direct answer, I'm scared. Taking the page number for that question, you can plug it into the Foxy grid and get the letter D, spelling Evad. Then, noticing all the references the book had to reflecting, along with the random mirror next to the word search that's never been used for anything, Hyperdroid reflected the answer, giving them the Crying Child's name. D-A-V-E.
Dave, huh? Dave. We went from Evan, that's the name for the Crying Child, then to Gregory, and now Dave. Interesting. I will say my mind immediately goes to the books because of course it does. Because think about how many lore implications, how many truths were revealed in the books. Like, we knew that the purple guy was William Afton through the books before the games revealed it. We knew Henry was a thing in the books before he was revealed in FNAF 6. Charlotte being the puppet was revealed in the books before FNAF 6 also came out and everything. So, a lot of times, names and stuff that happens in the books are then later featured or revealed in games. And Dave is interesting because the original trilogy of books, the Silver Eyes, Twisted Animatronics, and The Fourth Closet, way back when the FNAF books were a lot easier to talk about, but also not because people said it wasn't canon, but a lot easier because the amount. But Dave was used. That was William Afton's alibi. That was his anonymous name. That was the name that he went under to not cause any suspicion. Right? So, it being Dave, when Dave was also used to be William Afton's like secret name, secret identity to, go undercover basically. Interesting. If it is true that the name is Dave, it's just weird because my brain won't stop it being like, no, Dave was the anonymous name that William Afton used as a cover-up in the original trilogy of books. But it's also the name of the kid that was tortured with nightmare hallucinations. Right. Just let it be anything else.
Dave. Everybody lost their frontal lobes over this. But Hyperdroid wasn't done. Not only did he offer the initial solution, he also went classic game theory on all of us and used some real-world evidence. He calls out that Dave, or more accurately the full name David, was the 3rd to 5th most popular baby name for boys between 1970 and 1980, around the time that he would have been born. I love the fact he did this. Real-world evidence is so useful for theory crafting. It can give you insight into things that the games or books might otherwise not. And given how important this name...
Also, speaking of David, another connection in the books, in the Mimic story, Edwin, which we all link to being the book stand-in for Henry, his son, who dies, then is connected to the Mimic software, his name is David. So I just want to point that out. Probably means nothing in the theory, but I just want to call that out.
I wouldn't be surprised if Scott had actually done some real-world research himself into the name. And what's more...
I mean, it also wouldn't shock me. Because, it would not be the first time that Scott has used stuff that happened in the real world as, lore hints, basically hinting at intentions or how things work in his games. Because... way back when, FNAF was one game that people focused on. It was a final game that Scott was making. It's either this game's a success and it makes money and it turns into this huge conglomeration, 10 game, 30, 40 book, sequel, a trilogy of movies, right? Conglomeration. Turns into that. Or it's my final attempt at making games because he's made games in the past, but they just have never taken off. They never had any success. So that was his final attempt at making a game. And in FNAF 1, I don't know if it's still true, but I know when the game first came out and everything, people correlated the game to take place in 1993 because on the paycheck you got... I want to say it was $120 or $150. It was 120 something. And people linked that because, you worked 5 hours, or no, you worked 6 hours for 5 nights, and that equated to minimum wage being $3.70 or whatever, which was the exact minimum wage in the US in 1993. So we were able to make that connection. So once again, would not be the first time that Scott uses real world stuff as part of his games franchise.
I think we can actually expand upon Hyperdroid's idea here by getting a little more specific. So, let's give it a go. FNAF is commonly depicted as taking place in Hurricane, Utah. According to the United States Social Security Administration, between 1970 and 1980, David switched positions a few times, occupying either the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd, or the 1st most popular spots, higher than what Hyperdroid presented. So we're off to a pretty good start. Although, there is one detail about the Aftons that we never really talk about that could change all of this. Ludwig actually mentioned it when he binged all of the FNAF lore with Matt on stream.
Matt, why are they all British? Why are they British? The kids are raised in Utah and they sound British.
When the Aftons speak, they sound British. Likely somewhere from England based on the accents. I'd like to say it's nice to have some British representation in video games, but I'm not really sure this is the one I'd want to claim. Anyway, this detail could throw a spanner into the works, as there's a chance that William named his kids based on what was popular back home rather than where they lived now.
And we know Elizabeth is very big in England.
So, was David still a popular name in the UK? Thankfully, the answer is abso-freaking-lutely. More so than in America, actually. According to the Office of National Statistics, David was the most popular name for boys in England from 1954 to 1974. After that, between 1974 and 1994, it only dropped down to number 3. So still, this is looking like a pretty solid piece of evidence right now. Plus, we can actually take it a step further. Wanna guess what other name was in the top 10 baby boy names during the 70s? Michael. In the UK, Michael was the 9th most popular name for a boy, and in Utah, it was literally the number 1 name every year in the 70s, except 1973, where it was overtaken by Jason. Of course, Jason had to ruin the perfect streak. Hashtag blame Jason, am I right? Regardless, again, this seems to be lining up pretty well. But what about the final Afton child, Elizabeth? Well, she is also on these lists, although she's nowhere near as popular. In the UK for that time, she was sitting between 20th and 25th most popular name. And in Utah, it's similar, anywhere between 19th to 24th. That's not really as high as I'd like for it to feel like a solid connection. It isn't super bad. It would be way worse if the names were like 50th or 100th most popular, you know? But if this is being used as evidence for how Scott picked his names, then Elizabeth would likely need to follow that same pattern. And in reality, she'd have then ended up being called something like Sarah or Jennifer, both number 1 names for the time period in the UK and Utah respectively. Therefore, while David was a really popular name between the 1970s and 80s, it kind of feels like a weaker connection. Maybe Scott just thought Elizabeth sounded more British because that was the Queen at the time. Who knows? No need to worry though, because that wasn't the only real-world evidence Hyperdroid used. He also mentioned the meaning of the name David. While it was a popular name in both the UK and the US, it's actually of Hebrew origin, meaning beloved. Fun fact, Thomas also comes from a Hebrew word that means twin. I'm not a twin, at least as far as I know. Maybe you could let me know down in the comments if you think you found my long-lost twin. For this theory though, Hyperdroid claims that the meaning does make sense. He connects the meaning of beloved to the crying child's brother Mike, and how his whole character arc is caused by killing his brother, showing us that his brother Dave was beloved by him.
Was he? Was he beloved? Here, let me, get all my friends together on your birthday at a place that you are clearly scared and miserable at. Let me pick you up and throw you in the mouth of a Fredbear animatronic and then cause them to get bit and killed. And then let me also hide under your bed. Let me also hide behind the closet and everything and pop out scaring you wearing the Foxy mask. Yep, great sibling stuff. Great beloved sibling love right there. I don't know about that.
This is where I have to press X to doubt. While, yes, Michael does say sorry to his brother by the end of FNAF 4, the rest of his actions don't really say that he considered his brother beloved. He jump scares him, he actively puts him into an animatronic, he doesn't seem to care about him at all. After that, his actions seem to be spurred on more by his father. Afton sent him down into Sister Location, where he then learnt about Elizabeth and the monster his father was, and so went on a quest to destroy him. Some of that may have come from the guilt of killing his brother, but I'm just not convinced enough to say that Michael considered his brother beloved. Now, that doesn't mean that I think the meaning David being beloved is invalid evidence at all. He may not have been beloved by Michael, but he was beloved by someone else. William. William didn't want his little boy gone. He didn't want him to die. He needed to save him. I will put you back together. We've also believed for a long while that he killed Charlie in a drunken or emotional rage after the death of his own son. That wouldn't happen if he didn't care about his kid.
It's so tough. I mean, I said this in, I think it was the last FNAF reaction video we did, pinpointing what is the first death of this entire franchise. And it is so difficult because there is 3 deaths that we know of in the franchise that are very important, and they all have a case to be first. And crazy enough, one of those deaths is not the missing children incident where 5 kids were to a back room by William Afton and killed. Believe it or not, that is not the first of the timeline or early in the series, no matter how you slice it. Like, you could change all the stuff on the timeline, the events, these restaurants close, these restaurants open, William Afton's actions are redeemable, they're not redeemable. Like, you can change all that stuff around. But it's very consistent that no matter how you change the timeline, no matter what you do, one thing's always consistent. The missing children incident where the kids allude to a back room and killed by William Afton and stuffed in the suits where they possess the animatronics later on. That is not first or early on the timeline, no matter what. No matter what. The game opens and talks about and everything. Like, oh, what's the missing children incident? Yeah, it's not that important. It's not that early on the timeline. There's a lot more important events that are way earlier. But this is two of them. It's Charlotte's death. We know has to be early because they are how the puppy got created. And we also know it's early because it's the only time where William Afton kills someone outside the pizzeria. All of his other deaths are inside, so that is important, right? But then it begs the question, it can't be first because why would he kill Charlotte Henry's daughter when they're business partners? Like, why would that be first? Why would that be the first event of the series of killing them, right? That doesn't make sense. There would have to be something before that that would cause them to lash out and kill them instead of a blind rage. Like, he did it for a reason. So that's why Charlotte isn't first, right? And then you get to the FNAF 4 Crying Child. That has to be early on the timeline, right? But Elizabeth Afton also has to be early on the timeline. In fact, it's earlier than the FNAF 4 Crying Child, which... Do I say Dave? I don't even know anymore. David. You know who I'm talking about. Whenever I say David, FNAF 4 Crying Child, I'm probably going to say FNAF 4 Crying Child because it's never been confirmed. But we know Elizabeth Afton's also early on because, A, we still do not know what the FNAF 4 Crying Child saw that would make him scare the pizzeria, scare the animatronics. Explaining the teeth stomach hatch in Nightmare Fredbear's stomach that you see after night 5 when he's shoved in the mouth and killed. There's no explanation of that, of why you see mouth on his stomach. And it's always been, at least interpreted, at least one point or another, that the thing that the FNAF 4 Crying Child saw, and it explains the stomach mouth and everything, is the FNAF 4 Crying Child saw his sister, Elizabeth Afton, get lured in by Baby when she threw out ice cream, and then the claw mechanism came out of Baby, scooped up Elizabeth Afton, and then killed her, right? So, and then Chica says in Custom Night that she was first. She's seen everything. So, there's multiple things in the series that's like, this is first. This has to be first, and this is why. But it doesn't fit cleanly. It's kind of the same thing of what I was talking about earlier of how it's the assumption, it's the confirmation bias. That's what I was thinking of. It's a confirmation bias where you have an idea of how things go in your head and you try to artificially reverse engineer pieces together to make your argument work, right? Like, you know, you could believe that Charlotte is the first death in the series. I'm inclined to believe that as well, that they are first, but, you know, you could take that as they have to be first, and this is why. And ignoring inconsistencies of why people say, no, it can't be first, right? So, it's very tough. You wonder why this franchise is so hard to talk about from a timeline lore perspective. Because there's so many events with so much evidence that this is first. No, this is first. This has to happen first because of this, and it leads to this, and it fits cleanly. But there's one or two things that just doesn't fit satisfying. And to be honest, we probably will never get an answer of when the timeline actually is through Scott, which is disappointing. But at the end of the day, it's probably good for a business perspective because it keeps people like me talking about it for years later of what was the timeline? What was first?
His son wasn't beloved. And by associating that meaning with Afton, other pieces fall into place for the other Afton kids as well. Michael once again comes from the Hebrew language, and it means who is like God. Typically, this is meant as a rhetorical question because there is no one like God, but it could also be interpreted as a statement. Michael, who is like God. William is a man who has figured out power over life and death in this world. He sees himself as a god. And Mike tells us himself that the Funtime animatronics confuse him for his father.
They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
He is like his father. He is who is like God. The same thing goes for the name Elizabeth. It's derived from the Hebrew name Elisheva.
William Afton, by the way, the reason why William Afton is so connected to God and everything is because his whole purpose is, he can survive through death. He can get burned at multiple pizzerias. He can be in a horrific spring lock incident where he is skewered from the inside out and then left to die in a back room. But as he says, he always comes back. He is somehow able to gain immortality and never truly die. So that's the God connection. Oh, once again, just want to add context to it.
And means my God is a promise. One of the only lines we get from Elizabeth before she becomes baby is her begging William to let her play with baby.
Oh, Daddy, let me go to her. Didn't you make her just for me?
Baby was made by Afton for Elizabeth. She's annoyed because she is now being denied the thing made specifically for her. The thing that was promised to her by her father, by the God of this world. After that, she disobeyed and got scooped. And so Afton made her another promise, the same one he made the crying child. He sent Michael down into the bunker to put her back together. 3 Afton kids, 3 Hebrew names, 3 meanings that all point back towards dear.
Also, another promise you can even more connect to Elizabeth and everything. In FNAF 6, if you go how the game is supposed to be played, where you play through the nights in the room, you don't throw out the animatronics to the curb and everything. Instead, you salvage them and everything, and you complete the final night. You get that iconic Henry speech in FNAF 6 and everything. Elizabeth Afton says, which we know is, baby, but we know baby has a spirit of Elizabeth Afton inside of her, but baby Elizabeth Afton says, I will make you proud, Dad, which obviously Dad being William Afton. And that is why we have always assumed that baby is connected to the Pizza Plets, keeping William Afton underground in that bunker under the Pizza Plets because she wants to make William Afton Dad proud, and she wants to keep his spirit living on everything. Right, so that even more connects to the whole Elizabeth Afton promise to her dad and everything. I just want to throw that out there for even more evidence.
Old dad. It's like poetry.
It's like poetry, sort of, they rhyme.
Interestingly, William isn't of Hebrew origin, it's actually Germanic, but it also has an interesting meaning. Resolute protector or strong-willed warrior. He tried to protect Elizabeth. He was resolute in fixing and protecting the crying child after he died. And if you don't call surviving a spring-locking strong-willed, I don't know what else you'd call it. So, from a thematic standpoint, the name Dave does seem to work. Its meaning fits what we know of the character, and it ties into the same themes as the rest of the Afton family. It's at this point, though, I should probably address the Orville in the room. Real-world research is great, and strong connecting themes are fantastic pieces of supplementary evidence. But that's the point. They're supplementary.
Right.
If the core evidence isn't there to back it up in the first place, then it don't mean squat. It all comes down to the actual method that Hyperdroid used to solve this puzzle. And I'll be honest, when I first saw it, I was a little unsure.
100%. And, this goes for everything, not just like, real world example, or not just this theory with the FNAF World Chronicle. This goes for, since we're talking about FNAF, any theory out there where we're no longer at a point where it's good enough just to have a theory talking about, oh, I have a theory of what's going on. I have a theory of, I think this is a missing piece that we've always been missing for years, and all those clickbaity titles. It's no longer good enough to have a theory where you just exclusively talk about the games, because you have to mention the books as well, since there's many of them. There's definitely different versions, editions, storylines with the books and everything. And then you have the FNAF security logbook. You have the Freddy files, the character encyclopedias, other books out there, other supplemental material as well connected to the franchise. So you have to somehow connect those things besides the games as well to then come up with a theory, right? It's no longer enough to have a theory, have some evidence from the games, some Easter egg game things here and there, maybe some cut dialogue that didn't make the final product of the game, and then call it a day, because you ignore the books. On the flip side, you also can't have a theory where you just have stuff from the books and you ignore stuff from the games. They have to go hand in hand, where it's stuff from the games and the books. The games and books have to go together like a cake, right? I would say the games is the actual cake itself. And then the books, the encyclopedias, the Freddy files, cut dialogue, that stuff, Easter egg, teaser, images, trailers. I would say that is like the frosting and the other toppings on the cake itself. It has to work together. You can't just have the frosting itself, right? I would say that's the weird analogy, but I feel like that's the easiest way to get my point across, where multiple things have to go hand in hand now at this point in the series to come up with theory and come up with ideas of how things work and everything. It's no longer good enough just to have the games and then call it a day, because there's just way too many evidence points. There's so many different points from the franchise point. It's honestly hard to keep track of what isn't connected to the universe at this point. So it's not really related to the video. I just want to call that out there.
Using the faded text of "the party was for you and what do you see" make complete sense for the answers "it was for me and I can't see." I Can Hear Sounds technically works with "does he still talk to you?" though it's not the cleanest, but I'm scared being a response to "do you have dreams" does feel like a bit of a stretch.
Right.
The line only works because of the nightmare drawing on the same page, even though none of the other questions need context clues from the page.
And this comes back to the earlier in the video where you had EVA going one method and then you artificially manufacture, reverse engineer a way to get the N using completely different puzzle, completely different method. Obviously Evan is a real name, but the method's completely different, where it's like, okay, it doesn't fit cleanly. Like, yeah, it's a name, but it could fit a lot cleaner. Right? So having this evidence point be used differently than the others, it's a little stretch, right? Things have to be way more consistent than that.
This feeling was also exacerbated when Hyperdroid pointed back to a Reddit post by the user Ecstatic Marzipan 7 from the GT subreddit. They came up with a solution 3 years ago, so way to represent the GT community. But when I took a look at the original post, they were receiving similar pushback. People were commenting the same things that I'm saying now. However, we theorists are nothing if not thorough. We always dot our I's and cross our T's. Rather than just say, "this answer feels wrong," and throwing the whole thing out, I wanted to go back back through the logbook and do a bit of my own reverse engineering. I marked down every page number where Cassidy wrote something in the logbook. I then used those page numbers in the Foxy grid to find all the possible letters we could get to see if any of them gave us usable answers that we could then go back and pair with I'm scared. 2 of them got ruled out immediately. What do you remember and do you miss them? Because they're on pages 20 and 70. You can't go 0 down on a grid, so they're out. On page 56 we get what's your favorite ride the carousel, but that spells Vave, so that's out too. 3 of Cassidy's questions do give us letters that technically work. Do you remember your name is on page 31. Do any of these toys look familiar to you is on page 42. And did one of these belong to you is on page 43. 31 gives us a C, 42 gives us a W, and 43 gives us a P. Using these letters you can spell cave, wave, and pave. All real words, but not exactly names, especially considering the very normal Mike and Elizabeth. Although, page 43 isn't actually labeled as 43. It's one of the altered page numbers, and it shows 15. So I tried that too, and it gave me Yave, another dud. The only time I got close to another answer was by using page 23, which ironically gives you an N spelling Evan. Was Wolfie actually right all those years ago? Yeah, no. If you thought Do You Have Dreams made no sense with I'm Scared, I feel like Was Your Favorite Childhood Toy a Plastic Telephone is an even worse answer.
I mean, let's face it, the telephone with the big eyes grinning at you, ear to ear, it is kind of creepy, I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, I do see the point.
It would then mean we haven't reversed anything either, and so the mirror in the middle of the book would also remain unused, which isn't really ideal. The last page to try was 83, where Cassidy asks, is this song familiar to you? This gives you a T in the Foxy grid, and I tried using this as both an alternative for I'm Scared as well as I Can Hear Sounds, just to be sure, but no combination of those letters made a name either, which means, by process of elimination, Do You Have Dreams does kinda have to be the answer. If it's not, we'd also have to throw out the letters E, V, and A too, because we need to find an entirely new method to solve this grid. And at this point, I kind of feel like if there was another method, someone surely would have found it by now. I'm sure that some people still aren't going to be happy with this solution. For all the other questions, Crying Child was just responding to the words Cassidy said. But for this final one, you have to use Mike's drawing to get the full interpretation. As I've already said, that kind of breaks the method. Not as much as finding the N for Evan using the tally marks did, but enough that it doesn't feel satisfying. Except when you stop and look back, Scott actually did the same thing with the Cassidy puzzle. Think about it. At the start, we were using altered page numbers from pages with my name written on them. But as the puzzle went on, that changed. Suddenly, we stopped using altered page numbers and began using other altered numbers from the page, like 7 and 2 or 10 and 11. On some pages, we're not even using altered numbers. One of them, we use numbers written by Mike, a completely different character. And on another, you have to follow Mike's clue to a different page and then use the numbers that are just in the book. They're not altered, they're not written down, they're just there. We were still following the my name part of the puzzle, but the actual number used for the coordinates was different. That rule was being broken. And yet, no one really batted an eyelid when that was pitched out. Why? Because we got an answer that made sense. Yes, the method was a little messy, but clearly it was the correct solution that Scott had planned, given he then went on to confirm the name Cassidy in his cancelled movie ideas. To me, this is the same situation. We finally have an answer that spells a name and follows the same kind of puzzles, even if the method is a little messy. Maybe Scott wanted to make the puzzles harder as they went on, or, maybe he just isn't that good at planning puzzles to begin with. We theorists are so used to complex ciphers and ARGs that sometimes I think we expect everything we solve to be on that level, but in actuality, not everyone is. And so the simplest solutions can actually be the best. All that being said, what do I actually think? Is Dave the real name of the crying child? Well, even though a little messy, the solution does fit. It gives an answer for the random mirror in the middle of the book, and it works thematically with all of the Afton children and their parts in the story. Is Crying Child's name Dave? For me, after spending days going back and forth, looking at every side of the argument, I have to say that the answer is a resounding yes. I believe that Dave is the name of the crying child. So to Hyperdroid, Ecstatic Marzipan 7, and any other FNAF theorist that came up with this solution over the years, congratulations. congratulations. You did it. You solved the Foxy Grid, and you got the theorist's seal of approval. Editor, cue the applause. So nice to give one of these out, especially to people like Ecstatic Marzipan 7, who solved this thing over 3 years ago. It's a helpful reminder that there are some
All right. Cool. So that's the theory. Dave is the FNAF 4 Crown Child's name. Huh. Well, I still have to think about it. I did say my, thoughts, my issues with it, my positives. I'm like, yeah, I can see it. I would say once again, like I said earlier, my main pushback with the whole Dave thing and why I don't feel the same way about Cassidy. I was gonna say that at the end of the video, so I guess I'm gonna say it as recap. But the difference between the whole Cassidy reveal in the security logbook and why I grown to accept that more immediately than this Dave one is Cassidy was already in the books as a child, someone with black hair, connected to William Afton in some way or shape or form, right? So there was already Cassidy being used in the franchise as a kid, so it was a lot easier to believe, right? The pieces were already connected the dots. But on the other hand, you have Dave, who isn't used as a kid. Instead, it's William Afton's alias that he uses to go undercover so he doesn't get arrested for, kidnapping kids and killing them and trying not to get arrested by Henry, his business partner. So to go from a kid's name in the original trilogy of books to another name used in the original trilogy of books, but it's used as William Afton's alias, like, it just doesn't fit cleanly. I would have liked it to be something different, either a new name completely, or, to me, I have to remove the memory of William Afton having the alias Dave in the books in order to accept the idea that, yes, the FNAF 4 Crown Child's name is also the same name as William Afton's alias, which may not be a thing anymore, Right? Or unless William Afton named the Crown Child after his alias, which would also be weird or even harder to believe. So it's one of those things where I have to think about it. I think if Scott comes out and says that William Afton never had an alias, then yeah, I'd probably be way more inclined to believe this theory. I would be way more accepting of calling the Crown Child Dave instead of Crown Child nonstop. So, hey, maybe that's just what we need. We need a confirmation from Scott saying, yeah, that was just something in the books that was not real, timeline implications. William Afton didn't actually have an alias, right? Or something. Or hell, come on and say, yeah, the FNAF 4 Crown Child's name is Dave, right? Because the evidence of, the Michael being popular in, Hebrew and everything, and Elizabeth also being popular in Hebrew, and in my opinion, Elizabeth having even a stronger connection to the Hebrew stuff, talking about, a promise. Because we know since Elizabeth was first introduced in Lead Up to Sister Location, her whole character is someone who feels disconnected, disjointed, abandoned from William Afton, her father, and wanting to do anything that she can to make him happy, make him proud, get his attention, right? So having Elizabeth being connected to, a promise, like, if that's not a promise, then I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know what else is a promise at that point. So perfectly connected. And you can also make the argument with Michael, with the god, Because, yeah, he looks like his father, who views himself as a god because he's found immortality, right? In one way, shape, or another. So that makes sense. So there's a lot of evidence that points at being Dave. I would say I either have to remove speculation that William Afton used Dave as an alias to not be arrested in order to accept that that is the Crown Child's name. I think we remove that gets confirmed, denied, whatever. I think that's just the one pushback nitpick I have where it doesn't fit cleanly, right? If we can answer that, I'm on board. I'm willing to call the Crown Child Dave until the day the sun blows up, right? So that's my thoughts on it. Is his name Dave? Hopefully, probably. I hope so. Let us just figure out what this whole Dave, William Afton alias thing, and then, yeah, I'll believe it.